I hope you're all having an enjoyable afternoon because we are now in for a treat. Our next speaker has worked with a lot of world-leading brands like Nissan, Citi, and one of his favorites, Apple. He's going to talk about how technology changes the brand experience. All in conversation with Financial Times, Yi Yang, 8 Inc. CEO and founder, Tim Kobe.
Hi, good morning. Oh, sorry, good afternoon, because I was in the morning session. So good afternoon, everyone. In this afternoon, we will have a very legendary person with us, Tim Kobe, because he has done a lot of things, change everyone's shopping experience, especially the one who loves shopping. So at first, I would like to ask you to give us a brief introduction about you and what's your new observation about the design and the world.
Wow, big question. Background is founded 8 Inc., which is a strategic design firm in San Francisco. This year's our 30th year in business, and being able to basically bring strategic design work to many different types of companies. And we also have now a venture business, which we're involved in since about 6 years.
So your company, the name of your company is 8 Inc. Mm-hmm. So do you have any stories behind this?
How we became 8 Inc. Yeah, we started with my business partner and myself using our names as the brand, and determined that was probably the worst branding decision we could have made. And so we then shifted to, she was from Taiwan, so we shifted to the idea of using a number rather than a name. And she explained to me that it would be good feng shui. I liked the sort of the balance and the kind of perpetual aspects of it. And then the next year we were hired by Steve Jobs and Richard Branson, so I couldn't mess with the feng shui. Yeah.
Oh, since you mentioned about Steve Jobs, yeah. I think he's a man that's, you know, just like a legendary person. So everyone heard about his stories, but since you are the one who have worked with him for a long time, yeah. So can you share us about some stories and what kind of influence did he give you for your design and for your career?
Yeah, I think we were very fortunate. We were hired in 1997 when he came back to the company, originally to launch the products, and I wrote a white paper on why Apple should do retail, gave it to him. Then we were hired to start the retail program, and we basically worked with him every week for 12 years. So we got to know him quite well, and worked very closely with him on the program. And fortunately, the work turned into what it was.
Yes, let's talk about the first App Store.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was a very brave idea. So did you feel any risk that if you build such a very innovative retail store where if it's be failed, so how do you think about that time?
Yeah, at the time, I think the night before we opened the first store, Steve was sitting on one of the tables, and he asked us, what if nobody comes today?
Yes.
And so certainly there was risk on his mind. He didn't want to fail, and it wasn't clear that it was going to be a success or not. But the nice thing was there were many pundits who were saying it was going to be risky for Apple, and ultimately I think the risk would have been maybe listening to the pundits. But ultimately, the program became more and more successful. We started iterating on the design in the second year. Most of the competitors were looking at the first generation store. We already started moving to the second generation store. So we've been involved in 4 generations now over that time.
So what's the difference? Since now it's the 4th generation right now. So what's new things you would like to put into the retail store?
Well, now is the 5th generation, and that's controlled primarily by Johnny's group. Now Johnny Ive has just left the company, but the business continues to evolve. I think the key thing that we set up early on was many of the standards that have been deployed in more than 500 locations now. But it was always about looking at what was the experience that people were having with Apple and how could we improve that experience. So there was always a kind of iterative process.
So nowadays you are working quite close with Chinese companies and the Chinese retailers. So what kind of new things you find out, and what kind of areas do you think Chinese companies or Asian companies they would pay attention to?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty clear to us for a while that China has made some extraordinary leaps in terms of the development. If you look at the West, we come primarily from a hardwired, an Ethernet connected kind of world. China is really a mobile-first world today, and I think much of the improvements on integrated platforms and things like that have really been led by China development. I think when we look at companies, I was speaking at an Alibaba conference a few months ago, and what was really interesting is to the degree to which they're pushing design throughout their organization. It's not like it's a business discipline, it's something that permeates the entire business structure. And they spend an enormous amount of time and money encouraging all of the people who work for them to get stronger and better at design. So I think building a strong design culture is one piece that we see happening. Companies like Xiaomi that we've worked with, evolving the way people interact with the brand. So this is something maybe moving beyond what we used to call omni-channel retail. Now we call mono-channel retail, where everybody is simultaneously using mobile devices and the stores together. And we've done a site here in Shenzhen that has been very successful because of this new mono-channel strategy.
So, and could you give us some examples about Xiaomi? Because the Xiaomi store nowadays are quite popular and quite success.
Yeah.
And could you share us some of the secrets behind this?
Yeah, the secrets. I can't really share the secrets, but I think the stuff that's known. Xiaomi started as an offline channel to begin with, so they essentially were able to get market penetration without having to build stores, and at a certain point recognized that their competitors in China were building their own stores and starting to erode their market share. And so for Xiaomi to move from an offline experience, from an online experience to an offline experience, was a major shift in their business model. And so the way to address that really meant that we had to look at the experience differently, and we had to understand the way Xiaomi has sort of unique opportunities to engage with people. Because most people can purchase their products through their apps, we were able to do this within the retail experience. And ultimately, Xiaomi, because of that online market segment, they have 50 million user base that they use as a focus group. So before they ever launch a product, they'll put that into their user base to determine whether or not it's positive, negative feedback or any kind of feedback. And they know before they ever spend money on the tooling whether the product will be a success or not.
So I know it's a tough question. So is that possible for you to evaluate Xiaomi and Apple from your perspective? So what kind of new things you would like to put for Xiaomi, and what kind of things that it's exclusive for Apple? Do you think is there any kind of things?
It's tough to compare them. I know they like to draw parallels with each other, but really, I think Xiaomi has a much different model. They're not the traditional pyramid model that you might find in luxury brands, where Apple wants to position themselves as a pinnacle brand, but produce their products at a low cost. Xiaomi wants to have the highest quality products at the lowest possible cost. So in a way, it's an inversion from the traditional Western pyramid of looking at products. And when you compare them, Apple being founded, with such a strong single leader, and Xiaomi having a number of founders who all have core expertise in different areas, and Xiaomi makes more than 2,000 products. They're not just making a small focus group of products, but really pushing their business model into a very broad bandwidth.
So, do you have any kind of any brand that is your personally favorite? And why? And why?
Yeah, my personal favorites. I think it's important to not confuse companies with, say, the brand. The brand itself is ultimately an expression of the values of a company that people experience, and then the identity is one piece of that. So when you look across where you put brands and businesses in alignment, it's the ones who I think have the core value system that people understand and appreciate. They're able to communicate those values through all of the brand touch points, including any of the channels that people connect with, and then ultimately being able to express that in a way that's clear and coherent.
So, but you still haven't answered my question.
My favorite brands, yeah. I don't know. I like a lot of brands. I like Aesop actually. I think it's a great company. I think they do an interesting job of differentiating themselves from others. I think the new branding work that Airbnb has done is quite strong. So if you're looking at it from these different perspectives, there are companies that do better jobs expressing that, and they typically benefit financially.
So, is there any other brands that you think it's not good?
It's not good.
Yes. So, do you find any kind of typical mistakes the companies would have when they promote their brand?
Well, I think it's always a risk to believe that your logo is your brand. The Apple value system, they had a terrible logo to begin with, right? They had an apple with a rainbow going through it, and they were Apple Computers Inc. to begin with. I think getting clarity around what you stand for is always important, but your logo is not the only aspect of your brand that you need to be considering.
So, but since you mentioned about logo, and some people think, how can logo become a brand? So, is there any kind of process or any kind of ways for a company to make this logo become a quite well-known brand?
Well, I think, again, the symbols you create around your company, those symbols have to reflect the values. The values have to ladder back to the company. So it really doesn't matter as much about what that object is. Ultimately, the symbol that you use for your brand should be sophisticated enough to compete in the market that you're competing with.
So how do you think about the technologies nowadays? They have changed the design and the promotion of the brand. For example, AI. How do you think about AI? Will this affect your way to design the brand?
We don't really use AI when we think about designing the brand. I think AI is really in its infancy. So if you're looking at AI to create your logo, they could probably make a logo.
Yes.
But it's a bit like clip art and photography. It's like it's going to have a certain level of sophistication, but unless it comes from those brand values, it's just a decorative device. If it's a decorative device in itself, that's not enough to really create a brand around.
So, and you mentioned that you now stay in Singapore, and Singapore, I think, is a place that there are lots of cultures they coming together.
That's
so
right.
this would be a good place to create different kind of brands with a brand with different cultures. Do you think cultures would play a very important role for brands?
Ultimately, any successful brand is a culture. It's people who share a common set of values. So you can call that a nation like Singapore, or you can call that a company like Alibaba who are starting to coalesce around certain types of qualities. Most companies, to be successful in their business, have to have shared values with the people that they want to come and work with them, as well as the people that they want to purchase their products or to engage in their businesses.
So when you go to a retail store, so what kind of things you would look at? for example, like me, I am a customer. So when I go to a retail store, I would pay attention to the products. And what would you like to pay attention to?
I think ultimately you still focus on products when you're in a retail space. But I think that's really just the beginning. You ultimately have many more aspects to a company. If you're going to Chanel, they're going to treat you a certain way. If you're going to IKEA or you're going to other types of retailers, the engagement that you have there is different. And it's different because the culture and the values they stand for are different. So you tend to identify with those that share your point of view. Ultimately, their products need to resonate at the same level. So, I think it's probably, in a way, it's very complex. On the other hand, it can be quite simple because it needs to resonate with you ultimately for the company to be successful.
So nowadays, your company, so you have lots of, you set up different offices in different cities and in different countries.
Yeah.
So you also would have lots of talents working for you. So how do you evaluate these talents? And how do you think a young person can, become a good designer from your perspective?
Well, I guess when we look at a new location, one of the things we do, we bring 50% of the people from some other office that we have, and
The experienced staff.
sorry.
Oh, I mean, you bring experienced staff from other office to a new office.
Right, but it's about a 50-50 mix. So we'll take people from the local location, the culture, knowledge, and background, and mix that with 8 Inc. culture and background. And part of that is understanding the processes, the way we approach a problem. It's probably different from the way other companies have taught how to design things. And we tried to then really blend those two things, picking enough understanding and insight from the local culture, and then being able to build on that.
So what kind of specific ability that you acquire for young people?
For young people, I think a big part of design is recognizing its continuous learning process. So getting people in the proper mindset. Many young people will come out of school and believe that they have it all figured out, and they probably have really great potential. But in terms of the execution, I think it's probably something that takes some maturity for them to recognize, the things they don't know, and be able to help grow and develop that potential into something that's going to allow them to contribute to the business.
So go back to a few years ago when you were a young designer.
Yeah.
So what kind of things make you, to establish this dream to become a designer, and how do you accomplish it?
Yeah, I think you go back to the things that you're fundamentally interested in, the things that you know. One of the things we try to develop in the company is we try to work from people's strengths. So we try to identify their core strengths and put them in a position where their strengths can be utilized in the business. And usually if people are working from their strengths, they're going to be happier and they're going to do better work. So, statistically, that's the case. But it also means that you're going to have a studio full of people who are more committed and also much more engaged.
Thank you. I think our time is up.
Okay.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.